The gun conversation is very irritating to me as an African American. There's so many pink elephants in the room that nobody wants to touch on, probably because of the way in which free speech is being crushed right now, especially online. And I can understand uh, some of white people's frustrations because for fear of saying something and always being called uh, racist, but that doesn't give them license to act like they're not saying anything that is, clearly biased. Despite whether I agree with what somebody's saying, I still would defend the right for them to say it, whether it's hurtful or mean spirited or whatever. I'd defend Adolf Hitler's right to say what he wants to say because I already know um, how people don't really realize that when you limit free speech, there has to be somebody who gets to decide which speech is free and which speech is not, which speech is good and which speech is not. And sooner or later, it's going to come back around onto you. And I've pointed that out. I pointed out the same thing when it comes to white men in the gun control laws. Gun control laws were originally designed to keep guns out of the hands of freed slaves, black people, African Americans. And all through the 50s and the 60s and the 70s, gun laws were, uh, you know, reinforced or put in place. I know that there were gun laws before that, obviously, going back to slave codes and things of that nature. But I know that gun laws were strongly enforced in the 60s, with situations like the Mulford Act, which white people co-signed. They cheered it on, they embraced it, and now those same gun laws are being used against white people who want to arm themselves and be able to defend themselves and be able to exercise their Second Amendment rights. So, just like free speech, people will go out there and they will co-sign shutting somebody else up, and they forget the fact that sooner or later, that same restriction that overzealously embraced when it came to another person, sooner or later it's going to come back on you. Just like with the Mulford Act and not being able to conceal carry in California has come back on the white people who want to conceal carry in California. But again, like I said, when the Black Panthers wanted to exercise their rights against the police officers that they felt were threatening their community, white people shut that down. And liberals have used that against today's white people. And so I'm just, putting that out there as a cautionary tale about trying to silence people and trying to, think that because you don't like what somebody is saying, that it's okay to shut them up, but act like that same situation can't come back around onto you. So anyway, we got the three mass shootings within a week. You got the Garlic Festival, white male. We got the Texas El Paso shooting, white male. And then we have this new shooting in Ohio. I don't know the race of the person, but I'm assuming that is a white male, young white males. Okay. Now, the pink elephant in the room, my frustration is when I go on these YouTube videos and I read these comment sections. I'm subscribed to a lot of gun channels, a lot of uh, overwhelmingly majority and predominantly white gun channels because there's basically no black gun channels on YouTube. There's what Hank Strange, and he's not even really a black gun channel. Although lately he's been a little bit more woke in defending Coleon Noir than Coleon Noir being the second person. Other than that, there's really not a whole bunch of black gun channel YouTubers that are even if there are, they're not that big. They're not in the political arena and whatnot. And so we don't have a lot of voices in the black gun community. And there's this, cloud that lingers over black people when it comes to guns because there's the constant criminalization of the black male. Now, the thing that irritates me in these comment sections is, for example, I was watching Coda Boy, who's actually lives in Pennsylvania, but I guess he's from North Dakota or South Dakota, one of them. But, it's funny, and I've said this so many times before, but it just keeps happening where I'm listening to these videos of white men talk about the Second Amendment. And when they talk about the police officers coming for their guns, it's no longer Blue Lives Matter. When they talk about these red flag laws and the potential of white police officers kicking in their front door, because that's who's going to be kicking in their front door, it's no longer Blue Lives Matter. It's from my cold dead hands, give me liberty or give me death. The tree of liberty must be refreshed with the blood of patriots and tyrants. Right? They're ready and willing to kill law enforcement for infringing on their Second Amendment rights. If some liberal took over office and waved their magic pen and said, we're going to ban all these, and they sent in the police officers or the National Guard or SWAT teams or the military to go confiscate these weapons, these people are ready to gun down government officials who are other white men. Keep trying to tell white folks, if somebody comes for your guns, it ain't going to be black people. It's going to be white people. And I keep trying to tell black people that as an ex-slave population, and as living as an ex-slave population in a nation where you've never been fully incorporated into this system. Yeah, we desegregated. We didn't really integrate. We desegregated socially. But we didn't integrate financially, which is why black people continue to have the financial woes that they've generationally had, right? Capitalism operates on tribalism and group economics. White people want to deny that, but again, I talk about how they take out these, programs out of urban inner city schools, vocational programs and stuff like that. Those carpenter unions don't want to have a bunch of young black men with skills to be able to compete with them in the economic marketplace. So they do everything in their power to make sure that those things don't happen. Then you get these young black males, they got no jobs, they got no opportunities. They get themselves involved into the narco economy thanks to Reagan and Oliver North dumping drugs in the black community, whole nother conversation, right? And they end up with the problem of you got this inner city violence that really doesn't affect white people. It only spills onto them occasionally with the an armed robbery or carjacking or home invasion or something like that, right? Because these people are running around trying to survive, right? But by the same token, they don't have to compete in the economic marketplace against productive, upstanding black males. I've constantly made this point numerous times. I get tired of when white folks, especially white men, want to argue that black men, why don't they just be responsible and do X, Y? I'm like, do you really understand what it means to have an intact black community? It means that they would be competing against you in the economic marketplaces. It means people would have more options and more choices. They wouldn't have to go to, Louis Pizzeria. They could go to, Jamal and Sons, Southern cuisine or something, right? They could have choices from restaurants to electricians to carpenters to plumbers to exterminators to any small business that you want to name, corner stores, bodegas, landscapers, every type of small business that white men own, operate, and control. Black men would have the equivalent and be able to compete with you. You'd have to compete against the black guy. That's why to me it's just totally bullshit when people want to talk all this stuff about, we're all Americans and we want to see everybody do well. No, you don't. Not if it's going to affect you. Not if it's going to affect you putting food in your mouth and you being able to take care of your wife and you being able to, send your kid off to school and get an education, right? Because there's only so many jobs, so many spaces, so many seats. It's like musical chairs. More black people in the room means what? The possibility of less opportunities being there for white men. So when white men come through and they want we want the black community fixed, and they want to act like with the black community being fixed, there just be this explosion of enough jobs for everybody. That's bullshit. That's what the race riots of the 1920s and after World War I were all about. There were only so many seats, only so many jobs, and here you had black men came back from the war and they were working in some of those jobs, basically being like the Mexicans are today, because the white elites didn't want to pay them as much money. They could justify, oh, I don't have to pay the blacks as much. Why hire whites when I don't have to pay the blacks as much? Right? So I get frustrated, with the intellectual dishonesty coming from a lot of white men in the gun community online who don't want to be honest about, like they're so into their own Second Amendment that they really don't understand the social interaction between communities and economics and stuff like that. They want to act like all that like doesn't play into why we see the outcomes that we see. So talking about the shooting in El Paso in Ohio, right, that we've had recently, right, and even the Garlic Festival out there in California where they have all the gun control in the world. Okay. I saw some comments that basically, because people are basically calling it like it needs to be called out, that there is a problem with young white males in this country. I would say white males in general, because, I mean, again, when we go over there and we look at the statistics for suicides, right, when the liberals throw up their little gun numbers and they're like 33,000 deaths, no, 67% of that is suicides. The percentage that is homicides, which is only something like I think it's like 8,000 deaths or something like that. Anywhere from 11,000 to 8,000 deaths, something like that. I did the numbers a while ago, but 85% of that is inner city, poverty related, drug related, narco economy, violence in the black community. That's what the majority of that is. The suicides, the 67%, I'm willing to bet that that's overwhelmingly white males. Because white males are the number one statistic when it comes to suicide. Middle-aged white males, especially way out there in the Midwest. If you go on Google and you pull up the numbers, I did a video of this on my other YouTube channel that got shut down for hate speech, right? You can look at the numbers. The whole Midwestern area where there's nothing but white people out there, it's all red. That's where all the suicides are happening. Right? Because, and honestly, like when I look at this stuff, like with white males and them shooting up the place, I do think that there is a white entitlement that goes on with white men. This idea, because I can relate to it, because as a black man, we had that entitlement. In our own community, we were told and promised that, if you go out here and get an education and go to school, that there's going to be Kerry Washingtons wrapped around the block. That didn't happen because the culture has shifted, because black people have existed in an environment of prolonged exposure to poverty on top of white supremacy having its foot on their neck. So the idea that even black women even respect black men and want to get with, play this patriarchal game that you see in the white community, black women don't want to do that. Why do they want to submit and get with a black man when black men get their sustenance from white men and the white economy? At the end of the day, we're seen as the white man's bitch, right? This is part of the reasons why some black men embrace the street culture and all, and anything that's, it's illegal. It's a legal crime and selling drugs and everything else like that. But at the same time, you're not working for a white man. You're not being emasculated in that sense and having to hear your woman bitch about how weak you are because you don't control the economic landscape of your own community and whatnot. And there's this respect for rebellion, against the system, that I can understand it in a sense. But at the same time, even I recognize that that's not wholly beneficial. Even if we were going to have a black controlled structure, you would still have to respect the structure. But some people go so crazy that they don't even respect structure, period. So that's an internal problem that black people got to deal with, right? But I'm saying when I go over and I look at white men, I see something very similar, where white men were promised, especially young white men, that you're on top, you're the dominant member of society, right? But over the last couple of years, right, because the transgressions of white men have never really been addressed. It's all kind of bubbled up to the surface, and everybody vilifies white men like, oh, they're so evil and this, that, and the third, right? and young white men feel like they're not getting what they've been promised, and they're blaming it on minorities when it's really not minorities that are screwing them over. It's the white elites that are screwing them over. They're the ones that control the jobs. Black people don't control whether white people get a job or not. We can't even give jobs to ourselves. So here you have this economy that has changed. You got to go to college and get a worthless degree, and women are excelling in that in terms of going after these degrees that focus more on what do you call it? The service market, the service sector. Right? Where men, they no longer use their hands. Everything's made overseas and in China. Back in the 50s and the 60s, a man could graduate high school, go to some factory, join a union, get paid $35 an hour plus overtime, plus full medical and dental and benefits, and then go off and take care of a family, make more money than his wife, and basically be that traditional leave it to beaver patriarch. That doesn't exist anymore. And in my opinion, white men can't really handle that. And with the younger generation of white men, I don't think that they're not adjusted to the shifting economy, especially out there where in the Midwest where there are no jobs. I've been around this country, and I've seen white poverty that there's a lot of people that live in major metropolitan areas. They don't think it exists. Because in the major metropolitan areas, white people are typically balling out of control. They're the ones riding around in BMWs and S-Class Mercedes-Benzes and 7 Series and Audi A8s and Escalades. And that's white people. You see white people eating good, living good, got the best apartments with the best view, right? All those uppity liberals and whatnot, that's how they living. And the black people, they're like in the ghetto, in North Philly, in West Philly, in South Philly. Right, they living in poverty. That's black people's perception of it. But then once you leave the East Coast and you go out there in the middle of the country, you'll see white people that they don't have shit. And then white people will say, that black people are entitled, or they feel some type of way when they see a black person that's from the city and they're educated and whatnot. But the reality is when you look at the black people that live in those poor white areas, if white people are on their knees, black people are like prostrate on the floor when it comes to poverty. Like if white people are living in a shack, black people are like living in the forest somewhere, eating nuts and berries or something like that. Like they don't have anything at all. They only got the clothes on their back. So, I mean, that's just the reality of it, because, I don't know what it is with a lot of white people. A lot of white people have a lot of superiority complex when it comes to black people. White success, black failure is the barometer for white success. And the white elites have always used black people as that barometer for white success, so that nobody pays attention to what they're doing on Wall Street, stealing everybody's 401k, coming down with golden parachutes. So you get a white person, they see a black person driving a nice car, they start feeling some type of way, like, how did he get that? Right? As opposed to looking at the white elites that are basically screwing everybody over. It's funny how you get white people who feel some type of way when black people are doing well, because they'll be the number one people running around talking about go to school, get an education, personal responsibility, nigger. Right? They'll be the first one saying it. Then when the black person actually does that and the white person didn't do that, then the white person's sitting around feeling some type of way, feeling that there's some liberal evil agenda to hold the white man down and keep the black man up. I mean, this is the same type of rhetoric that got all the black people kicked out of Wilmington, North Carolina with the 1898 insurrection. Right, where white supremacy literally just took over the town. They just went in there and that's, because it was the era of Reconstruction. That whole white people got to stay ahead of black people, and then simultaneously talking out of both sides of their face, well, black people, you need to stop being criminals, you need to get your shit together and all this other stuff. And then when black people do, white people are left sitting there feeling some type of way. I'm like, do you want them to get their shit together and not be criminals or not? Because when they actually do, again, there's a whole bunch of white people feeling like they've somehow been cheated, right? So there's always that sort of conflict going on racially. And then when you get to the guns, it gets even more stupid. So I was looking at the comment, and here we go, right? It was pointed out that what's up with these white males shooting up these malls and schools and whatnot. And then a white guy came in and he started talking about how, well, what about Chicago? I'm like, oh, here we go with the deflection, right? The deflection and the what do you want to call it? What's it called? There's another word I'm looking for. It's not just deflection. They're deflecting away from what's going on with white people and just completely ignoring, you know, what the focus of the conversation should be, what the resolution should be. Because there is a problem with the white males going around shooting the place up. I say it time and time again. There's inner city violence and mass shootings are apples to oranges. It's not even apples to oranges. It's apples to plasma TVs. Those two things should not be compared like it's the same thing. Liberals go off and they're like, and we got to stop all this gun violence, right? They want to make it like it's one and the same. It's not one and the same. I could get rid of Chicago violence tomorrow. Give me about $50,000 jobs, 50,000 jobs that pay somewhere around $60,000. I could get a whole bunch of the violence in Chicago to stop. That doesn't mean all of it's going to stop, but I guarantee you I can get the vast majority of it to stop, because the violence is a byproduct of gang-related, poverty-induced narco economy violence. You can't call the cops and be like, oh, this guy stole half a key of cocaine. Can you get it back for me? No, you got to enforce it with violence. That's the nature of the narco economy. If there was no narco economy, there would be very little violence. But see, you got too many people that they got to make ends meet through the narco economy, and they can get themselves easily caught up. You know, it's not a corporate atmosphere. People don't get fired, they get killed. You know, people don't get laid off. You know, they get revenged on. They get murdered. So I just hate when people try to conflate these two things, because they're not conflatable. The violence that you see with white males when they go off and they shoot up these schools or buildings or whatever they go off and they shoot up, they want to kill everybody. There's a level of craziness and a level of evil that I don't understand when it comes to these white males and they go off and they do these mass shootings. You know, I know the FBI has its statistics, or 4 people in the area and whatever, and they say, and we talk about homicides in the black community. Yeah, it's a lot of deaths and homicides in the black community, but all of that is personal. If you're not in the streets, if you're not in gang life, you're not gonna interact with that. It's the same thing with white folks. White folks look at Chicago like Chicago's in a bubble because it doesn't affect white people. The black, that's why they call it black on black violence. Yeah, sure, there's instances where it can spill out. Hell, I was a black person that grew up in the suburbs. So, you know, I wasn't affected by that. I'm not even worrying about Ray Ray and Pookie and thugs and the Bloods and the Crips in the suburbs. I'm not worried about that. I'm worried about a white person walking into some white suburban mall I'm walking into and shooting the place up. That's my concern. My concern is not black guys who live in the ghetto. Unless I'm in the ghetto, I'm not worried about that. Why would I be in the ghetto? I have no clue why I would be in the ghetto. But I'm saying, again, if you're not involved in that life, the chances of you getting hit are probably slim, or extremely slim. Let me say that. Now, where it will spill on to white people or even black people who don't even live in the ghetto is when these guys get so desperate that they resort to muggings and carjackings and you know strong arm robbery and those sorts of things. That's where you can be affected by it, right? But that's out of necessity. That's not necessarily out of pure evil. Right, you can't even defend yourself. Like in other words, when it comes to like black crime, you can kind of avoid it, right? You can avoid it. It's like, okay, this is a bad area. I see it's a bad area. People don't have in this area. Let me not go into this area, right? You can avoid it. When it comes to mass shootings with white guys, you can't avoid that. You'll be at the movie theater. Guy comes in, wants to shoot the place up, kill everybody. You at the golf park, guy comes in, wants to shoot the place up. You know, you at the mall, you're at a picnic, you know what I mean? You're at a concert, they want to shoot the place up. That's not really avoidable. That's what freaks people out about it. Because people are going off and doing regular mundane stuff, and here you got somebody who they don't even know, never interacted with, never did anything that pissed them off, and they just want to shoot the place up. With black people, I say it again, with black people, if a black person gets shot at, and let's say they survived, and somebody was like, and then that same person ran to some other black person and were like, yo, they were trying to kill me, somebody shot at me, blah, 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 blah. They'd be like, well, what did you do? What did you do to piss them off, to make them want to shoot at you? It's like Bill Burr when he was talking about his whole joke about never hitting a woman. You know what I mean? It's like, don't, ladies, stop acting like every ass whooping just falls out of the sky. It's like people going to the zoo. It's like, well, why'd the bear maul you? Were you fucking with it? And that's how black people look at the situation. It's like, well, why does he want to kill you? Were you fucking with him? Were you involved in the gang life? That's why a lot of black people don't really care. Like white people, they like to cite inner city violence. Black people don't really. It's not that they don't care. They hate to see, sometimes an innocent person gets hit and whatnot. But we know that wasn't their intended target, right? When drug dealers kill drug dealers, it's kind of like the trash taking out the trash. That's how black people look at it. Especially when you see them being indifferent. With the mass shootings of white mass shooters, these guys, their whole goal is to kill anyone and every. It doesn't matter. This guy in El Paso wasn't walking around with his manifesto just specifically targeting Mexicans. Not that I know of, not that I heard of. He was shooting at anybody and everybody. He wasn't like, oh, are you a Mexican? Oh, are you an illegal alien? Like, no, he wasn't. He was just, I'm going to kill as many people as possible because for some reason in my brain, I think that really speaks to the manifesto and immigration laws. Like, it doesn't even make sense. The shit is retarded. Doesn't even make sense. With black people, that doesn't happen. I mean, what mass shooters have we had that are true mass shooters from the black sense that is similar to the white sense of a mass shooter? The only thing I could think of is the DC snipers. That's it. They went around shooting people indiscriminately that they did not know from Adam's apple. Okay? When black people go in, like let's talk, somebody brought up the guy in Virginia with the silencer that went into the store. First off, it's like here you got the guy with all the clearance in the world. And again, going back to the shit is personal with black people. When you see a black guy go into, even with white people, when you remember in the 90s, they used to have the thing with the whole people going postal. It was always a white guy, he worked at the post office, and something happened, and he snapped, and he went to his job and shot all the people at his job. Now, do you see how focused that is? It's a focused killing. It's not indiscriminate killing, it's a focused killing. With black people, black people's killings are focused. Right? There was another incident up in Connecticut, I think, some years ago, where a black guy went into his job and he shot the people up. He was citing discrimination on the job. That's the type of mass shooting that you're going to see from black people. If you're going to see mass shooting at all, it'll be a job-related mass shooting. I'm sick of these white people. They keep fucking with me, and they go in there and they shoot the place up. When it comes to all the other stuff, all that is drug-related violence. It's personal. You killed my brother. You owe me money. You fucked my bitch. That's what all that is. It's personal. When it comes to these white guys shooting the place up, there's nothing personal about it. Why'd you shoot that person? I didn't even know him. There's nothing personal about that. Same with Dylan Roof walking in the place and shooting it up, right? He's like, I'm shooting the blacks because black men rape our women. That was one of his justifications. But then he went into a church full of nothing but black women and shot black women. I think he only shot one black guy, and it was the pastor. But the majority of Dylan Roof's victims were old black women. You see? Even when we go to like Micah Johnson and Gavin Long. Gavin Long was the shooter in Baton Rouge that shot the cops, and Micah Johnson was the shooter that shot the cops in Dallas. Again, personal. These are two black veterans that came back, served their country, came back from Iraq, which everybody seems to forget, Iraq and Afghanistan, serving multiple tours, and they got to sit there and they got to watch Philando Castile bleed out in the car. Again, eventually people get sick and tired of being sick and tired. Well, they say, well, those cops didn't do it. Yeah, you're right. Those cops didn't do it, but they're wearing the colors. It's just like gang violence. The biggest gang in America is police, law enforcement, or police. And their color is blue. That's why the white folks running around screaming Blue Lives Matter. Again, until they come for their Second Amendment rights, and all of a sudden, from my cold dead hands, copper. But when black people, especially with the historical context that black people have with law enforcement in this country, when they get sick and tired of police fucking with them, and they go up there and they do what the white folks is talking about with the from my cold dead hands and all that other stuff, white people don't back them up. White people don't sit there and say, you know what, it's really about time for police officers to really stop fucking with black people like that. You know, we should really stop. But what they instead do is they want to conflate like what's going on in Chicago, or they'll bring up a case where it's like a real criminal with 5 felonies and he's shooting at the cop, and then they'll be like, where's Black Lives Matter now? Like they make these stupid ass false equivalences to try to make a point, like as though that's what black people are upset about. You got a criminal shooting at the cop and the cop shoots him, and that's what black people are marching and protesting about? No, they're marching and protesting about unarmed black men getting gunned down and shot for, oh my God, he's got a gun, it's his fucking wallet or something like that. And yet here you got a white guy in El Paso kills 20 people with an AK variant, and we got him alive. You got him alive. You got him alive. But Oscar Grant gets shot in the back, you know, in San Francisco or Oakland or whatever it was. Right? You got this guy down in El Paso. You got him alive. But when it comes to the Eric Garner, you know, he gets choked out for selling loose cigarettes. You see what I'm saying? Now, granted, this guy in Ohio, he got popped in the head. And again, I don't know whether he was black, white, or whatever, but I'm assuming that he's white based on the pattern of behavior. That's what I'm assuming, just like white people assume, you know, the person must be black because, you know, black criminality. The crazy thing is when it comes to law enforcement being gunned down, it's not black people that are the ones that are gunning down police officers. It's white people. It's these like 3%ers and these, you know, sovereign citizens and whatnot. Like those guys that walked into the Detroit police station, you know, masked up with their guns and whatnot after they got pulled over. Those are the biggest threat to law enforcement in America. It's not black folks. It's those folks. I mean, let's be real about it. If you're a white person listening to this video, are you really worried about going to a movie theater and a bunch of Black Panthers walk in there and start shooting everybody in the movie theater? Or are you worried more about some crazed white boy? Now, if you're in the ghetto at 3 o'clock in the morning trying to get money from the ATM, then you can tell me about how you're worried about Jamal in his hoodie coming up behind you and robbing you. Then I'd say, you know what? I understand. Right? Because you're in a predominantly black environment, you're in a predominantly poor environment, and you're, for some stupid reason, at the ATM at 3 o'clock in the morning, which, by definition, nobody goes to the ATM at 3 o'clock in the morning to pull out money for anything good. Right? So let's have an honest conversation about that. But what's just so frustrating to me is these sort of conflations. We're like, oh, what are you talking about? Colin Flattery says that there's a mass shooting in the black community every day. Right? I'm like, it's not this. It's a false equivalent. It is not the same as a white guy who grabs a gun and goes into a building or a church or and just indiscriminately shoots people. Doesn't care who they are, man, woman, child, race, whatever. Just is there to kill as many people as black people don't do that shit. I'm not saying it's never happened. Again, I can point to the DC snipers, but as a rule, we don't do that shit. As I've stated before, there has never been a mass shooting in a predominantly black school. Think about that. Think about that. It's like I could solve all the problems in Chicago with jobs and opportunities. I can't solve white men going off and shooting the place off with jobs and opportunities. Hell, the shooter in El Paso, I was watching a news clip and they showed where his parents live, where apparently he grew up. He got these big ass houses in Texas. I'm sitting there, I'm like, wait a minute. You got rich ass parents? What the fuck are you mad about? You a upper middle class white kid. What are you mad about? Right? You got all the privilege in the world. All you got to do is go, mommy and daddy, can I get a 3 Series BMW? Sure, schnookums. And bam, there you go, 3 Series BMW. What are you mad about? You know what I'm saying? You too dweeby. You can't get pussy. Go to the gym. Get some muscles. Go work out. You already got the money. All you got to do is, can I get money? Can I get an allowance to go and just blow? Yeah, here you go, son. Take that. Now, granted, you'll get the people that want to go full retard and they want to tell you about how, well, everybody who comes from a 2-parent home, that doesn't mean that they're well and sound people. I came from a single-parent home and I came out perfectly fine and I don't want to kill anybody. Okay, yeah, we get that. We get that. But 2-parent homes, by and large, are the most stable homes in the world, period. Okay? Homes, single moms, all that other stuff. Statistically speaking, that's where the runaways are. That's where the teen pregnancy happens. That's where the drug addiction happens. That's where the prison population comes from. So stop it with what are you saying about 2-parent? Because you always get the people that were raised by single parents. They always want to call, well, I came out perfectly fine. So irritating. We got a lot of that going on in the black community, and people want to, well, I came out I direct you to the conditions of a black community nearest you. Clearly, single motherhood is not working. Stop it. But, it's just like, I just can't stand the conflating. I can't stand it. We have not had a mass shooting in a predominantly black school. Inner city black kids, and that's another thing. It's like, you got white kids. Oh, they what if their parents were beating them or they were going through this, that, and the third? First off, lack of money and resources causes social dysfunction. If I want to see white social dysfunction, I go where white people are poor, not where white people are wealthy. You got black kids that go through all type of stuff because maybe their parents are addicts or daddy got locked up or whatever. They got all type of issues because there's a lack of money and resources, there's a lack of emotional support, all that. But yet and still, despite the fact that you have all this social dysfunction going on in the black community, right? You don't see these type of shootings in the black community. The overwhelming majority of violence in the black community comes from the narco economy. If you're not involved in the narco economy, the chances of you pulling a trigger on another black man is virtually non-existent. Unless you're defending yourself as a law-abiding CCW card-carrying citizen. Okay? Other than that, there's no inclination to kill anybody. Right? I bring up the point about, because people argue, well, this black culture is this and white culture is that, right? And I'm like, again, if to me, it's about the money and it's about the resources. Show me the upper middle class black kids that are committing drive-bys and other type of crimes and felonies, and I'll stand down. And then usually I'll get a white person and they'll say, well, see, those black people who are living the upper middle class white lifestyle are living the white lifestyle because they adopted white culture, right? And I'm like, oh, that's real slick. That's a real slick one. So in other words, in order to make money, you have to adopt white culture in order for you to, live the suburban lifestyle or whatever. Okay, all right, let's go with that. All right. So how come we don't see, if it's about adopting white culture, how come we don't see black kids in the suburbs with their adopted white culture, like the culture that I grew up in, committing these type of acts of violence and shooting up their predominantly white schools? Why don't we see that? Because if white kids that grow up in the suburbs or grow up well off like Adam Lanza or this guy in freaking Texas, if they are clearly white and growing up in white culture, they turn to shooting, becoming mass shooters and shooting up the place. Well, how come black kids that grow up in that same environment don't grow up into mass shooters that are shooting up their predominantly white schools? How come they don't have the same sickness? How come they don't have the same affliction if you're going to say that it's black culture versus white culture? Because if they have adopted white culture, then we should see more black kids shooting up their schools in the white suburbs in which they live. Right? I'm saying at least one case, at least one example of a black kid raised in the suburbs shooting up his predominantly white school because he has adopted white culture, and that negative aspect of white culture, which creates mass shooters, he's been negatively affected by. But we don't see that. See, this is like, it's bullshit. You're talking apples to plasma TVs. Okay? What goes on in the ghetto, what goes on in the inner city in terms of shootings and crime is poverty-related, drug-related enforcement of the narco economy, period. Period. Stick-up kids and muggings and everything, that can go on anywhere. But anywhere where people are desperate, that goes on anywhere. You can't assign that to a particular group or race or whatever. But when it comes to this unique situation of I'm going to kill everybody, that's white folks. That's white people. There's nothing extraordinary about me saying that. And I find it so funny at how, white people are so quick to pathologize everybody else except for themselves. Okay, when it's black people, oh, it's black culture, black crime, gangster culture, and that's what black people do, right? When it's Muslims, oh, see, it's the damn Quran, and it's that damn Islam. That's what the problem is, right? They pathologize it, right? But then when it comes to themselves, they're like, we don't know why this is happening. Why is this going on? Ah! And then you got one side talking about gun control. You got the other side talking about freedom. And I'm like, can we talk about white males? Can we talk about white males? Because they're the ones that's doing this shit 9 times out of 10. They're the ones that's doing this. Can we talk about them? I mean, if we go back and we start looking, you got to go all the way back to the Pulse nightclub before you get to a Muslim shooter, right? Or someone that's from the Middle East or something like that. You got to go all the way back to Pulse nightclub. Everything after that, the Sutherland Springs, the Vegas, and all that other shit, all that has been the white men, right? I think there was a white woman in Tennessee. She tried to do something stupid, right? So I'm just like, we need to have a conversation about what's going on with white males. Now, if I had to take a guess, I already said it earlier, I think it's this whole positive male identity. I think it's a sense of entitlement that a lot of young white men have because, things are changing. There's this whole oppression Olympics that's going on with the left, where it takes pretty much everybody, tries to form this rainbow coalition. Everybody except for the white male. They try to form this rainbow coalition and say that, all of their woes are due to white maleness and the system of white supremacy and whatnot. So I do think that may contribute to it. The other thing I think that contributes to it is I think the social media. The way that the news consistently goes out there and continues to idolize these mass shooters and make them notorious, and talk about their life and what they ate for breakfast that morning and who their friends are and who did they date in high school, and you know who you know who their parents are, and how they were when they were younger, and whatnot. And everybody wants to analyze it, but then it just kind of like disappears and goes away, and nobody wants to call out the pink elephant in the room, that there's a problem with white males in America, right? Like if you ask some black people, they were like, yeah, did you know Patrick? They'd be like, oh yeah, we knew him. Yeah, we knew that nigga was crazy. like that would be black people. Black people were like, oh yeah, we knew he was crazy. White people are like, oh my god, we just didn't see this coming. Like we don't even know what happened. Like it's just so funny sitting there watching this shit. Black people, we knew that nigga was crazy, man. He crazy. He wasn't talking to nobody. He antisocial. You know what I mean? We knew he was crazy. He posted fucked up shit on Facebook. We knew he was crazy. White people are like, I just don't understand. It's just I don't know. I don't know what to say about it. It's just there's not this honest conversation when it comes to guns in America, and what some of these, the root of the problem. I want to get to the root of the problem. And then when it comes to all this, we need to ban guns and all this other stuff. I just don't understand black people when it comes to that. I'm like, okay, so you say Donald Trump is racist, white nationalists are on the rise, police are out to get you, and now you think is the perfectly good time to disarm. Like, oh, genius. You're just so brilliant. I mean, if that ain't some Jared Taylor, black people have low IQs type shit, I don't know what the fuck it is. Even I can't explain it. I'm like, so you think now is a perfectly good time to disarm yourselves? I'm like, okay. Yeah, on top of the historical context of the fact that, the guns have always been attempted to be kept out of the hands of black people. Always. Except for when the FBI armed the Black Panthers to try to shift public opinion against the Black Panthers by trying to cause the Black Panthers to get an armed conflict with the police, which brought on the Mulford Act in the first place by using double agent Richard Aoki. You can look him up. Go look up Richard Aoki. Just Google it, YouTube it, and watch the clip, and you'll see. That's what black people talk about when they talk about white supremacy, and they talk about government programs like Black Identity Extremist and COINTELPRO. Go look up COINTELPRO. What is it? Counter-operative intelligence, something against black people. And look at the objectives of COINTELPRO. You can go on Wikipedia and pull it up. Look at the objectives of COINTELPRO. And then white people sit around and they talk about, well, I don't know why black people just can't get it together. They dismantled every aspect of black empowerment possible. And the only thing that black people were trying to do is basically live comfortably and have the same standard of living as white people. But nope, gotta smack that down. Then in the 80s, they dumped drugs in the black community. They created the gangster culture with the gangster rap that you see. Black people don't even own record labels like that. Most certainly not in the infant days of hip hop. You see, there's white men and Jewish men, and now they've created this culture, this other culture that black people operate and exist in, which is outside of the mainstream, that causes a whole bunch of problems that spill on the white people, and the white elites use it as a scapegoat to basically say that don't look at us, look at the niggers. They're more the problem than we are, even though the white folks, the white elites, are the ones that are parachuting down off of Mount Olympus with your 401k, not the black people. But you can't get white people to see this, right? They create the problem as a scapegoat. Black people have always been the scapegoats. Hell, when black people try to look at those pictures of black people marching in the 60s when they were trying to integrate, and look at the type of stuff that white people would just openly say on camera about black people wanting to better themselves and go to white schools that have more resources and education and whatnot. Did you see any sagging pants in those videos or those movies when you see Martin Luther King marching and whatnot? Did you see any of that? No, you didn't see nothing of that or none of that. You saw black people who wanted to better themselves. And then in came Vietnam, in came the dumping of drugs in the black community, in came the continued marginalization and discrimination in job employment and whatnot. If it takes money to maintain the integrity of the white community, what makes you think it doesn't take money and resources, the same money and resources, to maintain the integrity of the black community? That's why I look at white people with a side eye. I'm like, you're not getting around me with the money, dude. You can talk all that white Jesus stuff and you need to go to church and moral compass bullshit all you want. At the end of the day, it comes down to the money. Because I can go into the white community and we can go right in the middle of Appalachia where they got churches all over the place and they love them some white Jesus. And that's where I'm going to see the social dysfunction. That's where I'm going to see majority of the opioid epidemic. That's where I'm going to see kids out of wedlock. That's where I'm going to see laziness. That's where I'm going to see people, not doing what they need to do, or there's not enough jobs and opportunities for them. That's where I'm going to see that stuff. Not in lower Manhattan. No. I got to go where white people don't have shit. Then I'm going to see some fucked up white people. Not where they have. So why doesn't that same logic apply to black people? Again, please direct me to all of the upper middle class black kids committing drive-bys. Or any crime for that matter. Show it to me. Where's it going on? Nobody can point this out to me. So again, pink elephant in the room when it comes to guns and it comes to this, the Second Amendment in these mass shootings is the white male. What is going on with the white male? I don't know what's going on with the white male. I can only speculate. I am not a white male. But I notice how white folks are so resistant to even having a conversation about that for fear of pathologizing white males, even though they have no issue pathologizing everybody else. Oh, it's because they're this way, and that's just how they are. Okay. So blacks are this way, and that's just how they are. Muslims, they're this way, and that's just how they are, right? But when it comes to white males, oh no, you gotta judge each person individually and you can't generalize. And it's like, oh, really? It's funny how that works. But anyway, that's pretty much all I gotta say to all the black people listening to this video. Obviously you support the Second Amendment if you listening to me. And I'm saying just keep supporting it. And try to convince as many black people as you can that they need to support the Second Amendment and why. Because, we can talk all that, we're all Americans and we got to fight for the same cause when it comes to preserving our rights. But at the end of the day, real talk, the Second Amendment for us is not just to protect ourselves from the criminals that exist in our own community, but also to protect ourselves from white folks. The very people that we go out there and, will support, advocating for the Second Amendment, we have to worry about them because of how they view us. And you saw this during Hurricane Katrina, where they were plucking white people out of the crowd and pointing guns at black people and telling them to back up away from the boat. So when shit hits the fan, if something were to happen, some cataclysm, like the movie The Road or some shit like that, you best believe these white people will turn on you on a dime. Not all of them. I'm not saying all of them, but I'm saying, their biases will come out because, that's it's like in them to do that. Just like with the mass shootings. I don't know what's going on there. All I know is I got to take care of handle my business and protect myself, if it based on whatever arises, whatever is thrown at me. And that's how black people need to think and operate and stop getting caught up in all this okie doke and all this symbolism about, patriotism and America this and America that and whatnot. We're American when it comes to going off and fighting the white man's wars, but then as soon as we get back and we get done fighting their wars, then it's personal responsibility, nigger. When we're running around looking for a job or an opportunity, Then they tell us, why don't you go and build it on yourself? Can't even get loans from the bank because of redlining. You see, to even establish your own business because it's their system. But they want to deny and ignore and pretend like none of that exists. None of the discrimination exists. None of the marginalization exists. None of the tribalism and group economics exists. You see? So, none of the, well, you should be a Christian like me because we're all God's children. How many white people do you actually see operating on the we're all God's children principle? It's bullshit. It's bullshit. It's fucking lip service. So, again, to my black people listening to this video, strap up, protect yourselves, train, practice, all the above. Right? To the white folks listening to this video, y'all need to take a good hard look in the mirror. And you need to reevaluate yourselves and try to figure out what's going on. Because when it comes to these mass shootings, the problem ain't black folks and us possessing guns. The problem is you. And there's a complete, utter unwillingness to examine this problem from the angle in which it needs to be examined. Again, I'm not up here judging and all this. I don't know what's going on with white males. Only you all could answer that or maybe speculate on that better than I can. But I'm getting sick of the tiptoeing and the political correctness around, what this issue is. So, in any event, that's my video. New Jersey gun laws out.